Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Lewis Speaks 2024, and today I want to talk to you all about some of the messages that I received growing up regarding masculinity. Oftentimes when you have been raised in female dominated homes, you receive these messages that oftentimes undermine the expression of your masculine energy. The purpose of this video is to begin to heal and to begin to unpack all of the messages that I received growing up about my masculinity in an effort to begin operating more from a healthy masculine mindset. This video is not intended to blame or to antagonize my caretakers. This is me taking accountability for the messages that I received and how I interpreted those messages and how that impacted my life. You know, just a bit of history. Growing up, I was raised by a single mother. You know, she operated from the lens and from the mindset of a woman, of a single woman, trying to raise a man-child. And oftentimes, the messages that I would be flooded with were, let me just say, not conducive to my male energy. You know, I remember my grandmother. She would have these sister circles, and in these sister circles, they would oftentimes be male bashing. They would oftentimes be sharing their experiences with men, and these weren't always positive experiences. So it left me, confused. It left me feeling very alone. I would always be within earshot. They would be in the living room. I would be somewhere playing, either in the bedroom or in the kitchen. And I would overhear this. And I didn't realize it at the time. But ultimately, being inundated with those messages, having those messages constantly programmed into my psyche, that would undermine my male energy. That will undermine my motivation to lean into my masculine energy. And so what ended up happening is that oftentimes I would over-identify with the experiences of these women in an effort to belong, in an effort to be included, in an effort to be accepted. I would oftentimes share my experiences with men, which, to be honest, they weren't always the best. Growing up, I was also picked on by men. I was called faggot, sissy. I was called every name in the book, sugar in your tank, all that. These people didn't know that I was raised by a lot of women. And oftentimes that feminine energy, it obstructed my masculine energy. What I needed at the time was a healthy man in my life who could show me just what it meant to be a man. The beauty and wonder in what it meant to be a man. But I didn't have access to that. My uncles were in jail. My father left when I was 3. The men at school, they would be abusive towards me, trying to pick on me, bully me. And so I really didn't have that male influence. And so what ended up happening, I leaned into the spaces that accepted me. The women, they drew me in. I guess they were so happy to be around some version of masculinity that they drew me in, And I leaned into their love. And I started to see that based on what they were saying, being a man was dangerous. The messages that I received, just for clarity, I'm just put it out there. The messages that I picked up were: men hurt you, men are not to be trusted, men leave you, men are abusive, men are dangerous. It's not safe to love a man. It's not safe to trust a man. The messages that I received regarding my own masculinity were patriarchy is real. You know, men want to control my masculinity, wanted to control, dominate, and just a host of other messages. So many messages about what it meant to be a man. And a lot of these messages were negative. I gotta be honest, they were negative and they were not helpful. You know, and they were, truth be told, they were also just very generalized, you know, because not all men are like this, you know, but once again, I had only the experiences of these women to rely on. I didn't have access to another man that could help challenge that perspective at the time. And so I grew up with this conditioning, you know. And so how that affected me, that made me reject my own masculine energy. That made me try to tone it down, dilute it so that way it's more palatable, you know, not palpable, but palatable to people. You know, I didn't want to be abrasive. I didn't want to be that guy who was just forceful and just a jerk. So I would oftentimes tone down my masculine energy in order to accommodate the perspectives of other women. Little did I know that while women also had an issue with that masculine energy, it's also energy that they kept on going towards and leaning towards. And that's energy that they basically wanted more of in their lives. You know, they, on one hand, said that they don't want a man who is so domineering and take charge. Yeah, it's no. But then on the other, they want a man who is decisive, who is take charge. You know, so it's just, I kept on getting these very conflicting messages, you know, and that also led to this confusion about who am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to be? You know, so I was just confused. Growing up, I was very confused. You know, I kept on trying to be the right thing. What was the right thing? And I thought at the time, I thought that the right thing was being very sensitive, very considerate, at the detriment of my own masculine expression. You know, and this is where I feel like young boys, they need their fathers. They need their fathers to help offset that feminine energy that's in the household, because what ends up happening is that that young boy begins to adopt a worldview that is based on the lenses and the vision and the perspective of women, as opposed to men. This young boy is going to eventually grow up to be a man. And so he needs to borrow not only the ego strength of his father, he needs to borrow the perspective of his father. He needs to borrow the courage of his father. He needs to borrow those things temporarily until he builds them on his own. He needs a blueprint. That young boy needs a blueprint on how to be a solid man. And I think, to be honest, another man is essential in order to do that. That's just how it is. And so, as I mentioned before, I didn't have access to that. So I adopted this perspective that women had. And so I grew up with that. And oftentimes my mannerisms would be feminine. I would oftentimes try to tone down. You know, I felt things, but I would kind of just calm down. Don't want to be that aggressive macho type. Don't want to be that, you know, male chauvinist. You know, don't want to be that oppressive energy, because that's, once again, a message that I received growing up, is that masculinity is oppressive. Masculinity is responsible for all the killings, the wars, the damage. I have never seen in real time how male energy has been constructive, you know, has led to a growth and a building up of things. I've only saw male energy as destructive, as damaging, you know, even with the language, how men describe sex, you know, cut it up, beat it up, let me gut her, let me gut her, you know, let me tear it up, I'ma tear it up. It's always something to destroy as opposed to uplift. And so I was just like, okay, I don't know if I want to be like that. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be that type of dude. And so I veered off, you know, started to lean more into this feminine energy. But at the same time, I had a curiosity about men. I still wanted to know how men worked. And once again, not having access to those mentors, not having access to real male friendship, you know, except in the gay community. When I veered off into that community, I realized that I started to have a lot of friendships, not really a lot of friendships, but some friendship, more friendships than I had when I was, I guess, performing heterosexuality. So I basically had friendships in the gay community that were men, and oftentimes they were desire based. If I'm going to be 100%, many of the men and the boys that were my friend, on some level, they desired to be with me sexually. And a part of me appreciated that because I had something that they wanted. So I knew that they would never leave, like my father, you know? He left. But with these boys, I knew I had something that they wanted. So I felt like I could barter that just to keep them around a little longer. Did that mindset work? No, it did not. It didn't work at all. Because oftentimes they would get frustrated, they would feel rejected. They would basically interpret that rejection as another rejection that they've, you know, experienced. It would be like their father rejecting them all over again. And so they got frustrated and angry. And once again, that's the end of that friendship or friendships. So it's like I never had that solid male energy. And I think that I'm not alone here. When I look at other gay men and I ask them about their experiences, many of them either grew up in homes where there was no male role models, no male influence, or they had satellite fathers who were basically just circling the household, but not really involved or invested or committed to their son's growth and development. And so oftentimes these sons would lean more towards the women, the ones who are nurturing, the ones who are caring. And so they would adopt that energy, that feminine energy. And so I think with a lot of gay men, we really have complicated relationships to non-existent relationships with our fathers. You know, and once again, this is not the be all to end all. This is not every gay man's story. I want to clarify, because there are some gay men who have fathers in their lives. You know, but I know for me personally, and also for other gay men who I have spoken with, they don't have fathers. They don't have solid men in their lives. They don't have that support network of brotherhood. They don't have that. So they don't know what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, you know? And I think, truth be told, when you don't have that solid male connection, there's two ways you can go. Either you can go down the road of hypermasculinity and being this quote unquote alpha male, where you begin to be a womanizer and you begin to be a player, thinking that that's what it means to be a man. Or you can go down the road of hyperfemininity, where you begin to over-identify with women, their perspective. You begin to enjoy shows and culture and movies and music that reflect the feminine perspective at the detriment of your own masculine energy. You know, so where does all that energy go, right? Where does that go if it's not expressed? Oftentimes, I've realized some gay men, they've outsourced it. They look for hyper masculine men, you know? And I guess so they could be masculine by association. They project that energy outward. They externalize their own masculinity by looking for that in other men. You know, let them, in a way, it's kind of like let them be the bad guy and they get to be exonerated, you know? Um, and I've noticed that dynamic. You know, a lot of gay men are looking for that masculine energy when it's really right inside of them. They just have lost touch with their own masculine energy. They're not operating from a healthy masculine identity. They're operating from this adopted feminine energy as a result of growing up in those environments, surrounded by those women, those sister circles. Our men, truth be told, even heterosexual men, they really don't have, and this is not all, but they really don't have men's circles where we can all get together and connect with one another. I see that slowly starting to shift a little bit now and in 2024. I think they're starting to shift a bit because men are starting to realize that their health, their physical health, their mental health, their spiritual health relies on connection with other men, you know? In order for them to maintain their health, they have to go out here and socialize. It's a matter of life and death, you know? And I guess it had to get that drastic in order for men to be motivated to do that, because back when I was growing up, there were no men's circles. It was always very touch and go. Even the communication, the handshakes, they would just shake your hand like this. It would be like this, or a dap, or it's something very touch and go, touch and go. Nothing embracing. There's no nurturing. There's no tenderness. And that word right there, tenderness, that's what's missing with men. We don't offer each other tenderness. We don't offer each other compassion. We offer each other competition. We offer each other coldness. We don't offer that care and concern and that investment that we need in order to thrive as men. We always have to preface it with, oh, no homo, man, no homo. Or the new thing is no diddy, no diddy, referring to Puff Daddy and the recent scandal he's in. But it's like, in order for us to show tenderness, our masculinity is questioned. You know, our sexuality is in question. If we are compassionate, you know, and offer that kindness, oftentimes we will be accused of being gay, because I guess this is not how men traditionally act. But let's talk about traditional role. When we talk about what's tradition is we die early. Tradition is we suffer in silence. Tradition is we take our mental health issues and we drink it away. We sex it away. We smoke it away. You know, like Solange says in her song Cranes in the Sky, you know, we basically do all that. We exercise it away. You know, we do all these compensatory behaviors that only mask and do not heal the real issues that are going on, you know? So I think we as men have got to start unpacking. We've got to start unpacking all the destructive messages that we have received about our own masculine energy. For those who identify as gay men, we have got to definitely begin to reconnect and rebuild a relationship with our own masculinity, because I think that we have been separated from our own masculinity. And it's time that we bring that back home. It's time that we come home to who our true selves are, because I don't know if a lot of people talk about I'm living my truth. I don't know if that's true per se, because I think that a lot of what we call our truth is the product of conditioning, is the product of the media, is the product of our surroundings, our environment, and what we've been raised around. And so is that the truth about who we are? Am I my environment? Am I what my environment tells me to be? Who am I really when I get down to the bare bones of everything? You know? Who am I really? You know? Who does my Creator, my Heavenly Father, who does God want me to be? You know? What did He create me to do? You know? These are questions that we need to ask ourselves. Because everybody's talking about, I'm living my truth, living my truth. A lot of times we're living our wounds. We're not living our truth. We're living our wounds. And so oftentimes our wounds masquerade as truth because it hurts and we're expressing the hurt and we're bleeding out the pain. And this is just who we are. That's not who we are. That's who we hurt. That's what it is. That's who we hurt. That's who we perform. We're performing pain. We're performing misery. And if we keep on performing that, that's exactly where we're going to stay. It's going to become our identity. You know? If you constantly practice something, that's going to be who you become. You are what you practice. And that's the truth. You are what you practice. If you want to practice healing, if you want to practice leaning into your masculine energy, well, then you will definitely learn how to be a strong, solid, healthy man. A healthy man. But if you continue performing these feminine antics as a man, you're going to stay stuck there. You're going to stay stuck there. And so this is where we are. I think especially, and I make this video a lot of times for gay men, because I think that we are definitely trapped. We're trapped in this false world where we think that this is who we are, but it's really who we're not. It's really who we practiced to be. We had years. Many of us have been through significant traumas, and we continue to live in that state of mind. We are stuck, in that 6-year-old mindset, that 12-year-old, 13-year-old mindset. We're stuck in those mindsets, and that's not who we are. That's called regression. That's called arrested development. That's called stagnation. That's called being frozen. That's a trauma response. That's not who we are, who we were intended to be. So many of us never get an opportunity to meet the person that we are because we're too busy being the person that either other people want us to be, or we're too busy being the person that our wounds tell us we should be. And that's not who we are. And so with me personally, this is why I'm making this video, because I feel like if I am to be the man that I was destined and ordained to be, I have got to, for one, unpack all the negative messages that I have received about masculinity. And I've got to challenge those messages. I've got to realize that there are men out there who are good, solid, who are healthy, who are responsible, who are accountable, who are loyal, who can be trusted, who are dependable. That word in and of itself means a whole lot to me, because growing up, my father was never dependable. He was never accountable. He would always tell me he would show up, did not show up. When I would express my rage, my anger, my disappointment, he would oftentimes blame me, make excuses for his poor behavior, or just disappear. He wasn't accountable, and he wasn't reliable, and he was not dependable. And so this is where I learned. This is where I learned what a man is. And that's a false definition, because my father had his own trauma history. He had his own unhealed wounds and his own demons that he had to battle. He struggled. And so he has my compassion. At the same time, I realize that it's my responsibility to be the man that he never could. To be the man he never could be. And so this is when you grow up, and this is when you realize that you can continue to blame other people and blame situations and blame the past and blame your mom or your dad or your uncles or your cousins or your grandmother or your grandfather. You can continue to blame these people, or you can take responsibility for yourself and the things that you need to heal and grow. And you basically just take that and run. Take it and run. Run towards your healing. Don't walk, run towards your healing, because you deserve that. You deserve a good life. You deserve to give yourself a chance. That's how you show yourself that you love yourself. So I hope this video was definitely an introduction for some and an invitation to begin to really unpack those messages that you received about your masculinity, and for women, even about your femininity, because I'm sure that there are women out there who have received some really, really destructive messages about their femininity. So I definitely encourage them as well to do that work. And so I'm hoping also for men, this is an invitation to begin to just unpack, dissect and analyze those messages, sift through those messages, and begin to explore. Explore their meaning, how it has impacted your life, how it has shown up in relationships, at work, in social settings, how these wounds and how these messages have caused you to behave. Did it cause you to play small? Do you feel as though you have to tone yourself down in certain spaces because you still operate from these destructive messages? They're unhelpful. They're not going to help you soar and become the person that you are destined to be. So it's time to let it go. Time to let that go and become the person that you were meant to be. So I hope this video was helpful. And I wish you all a wonderful 2024 and also a wonderful journey as you begin to come back home to yourself. All right, y'all. Peace.